Hello, YouTube, Sapphire and Steel community. I am back with another player interview deck profile, and this time I brought a very special guest. I've been meaning to have him on the channel. I met him through the 20 Lore Pro Discord. He's a very skilled Sapphire and Steel player. We've been meaning to upload a video together. I just haven't had the chance to, but finally, after his amazing run at the European Continentals, I am here with Justin, and he is going to pretty much go over his amazing run again, finishing 20th place in the EU Continentals. Congratulations to you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for those of you who don't know him?
So, hi everyone, I'm Justin. I'm originally from the Philippines. I moved to the Netherlands. I grew up with Disney and I grew up playing cards. So, when Lorcana came out, I was like, yes, perfect. The game that combines two things I love. Uh, I've I've always been actually a bit of a brewer in other card games, but I never could stick with one deck. But like Blue Steel might have changed something in me because it was a deck that I fell in love with. I've played it since set two, and I never looked back after that. It's one of my favorite decks, and I'm happy to be here to share my experience with you guys.
Yes, and you can tell it is your favorite deck because you've had an awesome run this year using the deck of Sapphire and Steel. You have not only gotten in 20th place at the Continentals, but you also were able to secure a top four finish at the DLC Bochum, also being a Golden Mickey winner. How does it feel now that the season's over? You did what you did, and looking back with Sapphire Steel, the deck that you've used pretty much all format.
Well, I'm pretty happy with how it went. I think this was like the first like year of like really big competitive Disney tournaments,
Hmm.
and I'm really happy with how things went playing my favorite deck. I just want more actually. Like I was like, I want more challenges.
Hmm.
Like I'm
Hmm.
glad they announced one in Australia, but coming from Europe, that's kind of on the exact opposite end of the world. But I'm just excited for more tournaments.
Yeah, I know. They already announced some tournaments in Australia, and there's some people that are gonna go over there, but that's too out of my budget, so we gotta wait one that's closer for you. But until then, again, congrats on your success this year. And after getting your top finishes at the Disney Lorcana Challenge events, how did you prepare yourself going into Continentals? Again, you've said that you love Sapphire Steel. Um, when the new set came out and you saw the support that was released, where was your mind at, and how did you calculate that to where, like, okay, I'm gonna use Sapphire Steel, and you want to have that not pressure, but you want to go and win this tournament. How do you prepare for yourself something like that with a player at your skill going against players just like yourself?
So a lot of my friends and teammates had the dilemma of what deck do I pick
Mm-hmm.
for Continentals, and I'm like, well, I don't have that problem. Like so Blue Steel was what I had in mind.
Uh-huh.
I had a very different problem though because when you play decks like Amber Steel, you're very proactive. You know, you just want to execute your game plan and win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Sapphire Steel, you kind of have to tailor it depending on what the meta is. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably why Sapphire Steel usually struggles at the start of every new set because you don't know how to adjust the deck
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what the field is going to look like. So while some of my friends were testing like what deck to play, I was trying to figure out like what card choices I want
Mm-hmm.
to run for the tournament. Uh, I think yeah, to prepare for Continentals, the most important thing I did was playtest. We had to figure out like what were the decks that we expected to see for Continentals and ask ourselves, can we beat those decks with our current build? Uh, at that time, we were expecting a lot of Ruby Sapphire,
Mm-hmm.
Emerald Steel, Amber Steel, and Ruby Amethyst. So I just had to be sure that I had to build a deck that would not like
Mm-hmm.
auto lose to any of these because in a best of two format, it's very unforgiving. If taking a loss is almost and like a game over for the tournament.
Mm-hmm. Pretty
So
much, yeah.
that's what I had to do. Yeah.
And like you said, right, you lose one game, one match, and it's pretty much over for you. It's gonna be way harder for you to stay in it. And with a deck like Sapphire Steel, a lot of people know that it's a very strong deck for a best of three, but for a best of two is where it kind of like gets a little awkward. How did you tailor your list to do? Well, I know we'll get into your list right now, but even with that two game format in your head, not only with the practice, but were you looking towards more like, okay, I want my build to beat, for example, I know in Europe, green purple is very popular. You still have red blue running around as being one of the stronger decks. Were you just more focused on beating everything equally, or were you more going towards, I need to beat these two, three decks in particular?
Well, generally, I build my decks to be pretty balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the idea, I like the comfort of when I play Blue Steel,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid of whatever deck my opponent plays when they're seated in front of me. I mean, that's my approach. If I really wanted to like target a certain deck, it is possible, but I felt that I didn't. Well, at that time, I didn't think that one deck would like dominate the like
The
take
whole
up
meta.
most of the meta share. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong. Blue red was pretty common. I if you look at my like if you look at what I played in like the revival tournament, it was a version specifically meant to beat blue red because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But with the knowledge of an open field, I went for a build that I'd feel comfortable with no matter what I played against.
And you say that you love Sapphire Steel, but what is it particular about the deck that you think is the reason why you still playing it? Because a lot of people, I say a lot of people just because for the most part, Sapphire Steel isn't considered to be the best deck in the format. I know for myself, there's still players who are into the deck, but for the most part on the outside, people might not see it as like, it's not. What is it about you that you said, you know what? Other than the experience and the reps that you had, because you can still a player at your level could probably learn red blue um, just as fast. What was it about blue steel that you were just like, I'm gonna pick this other, or was it just it's the most reps that I have in this deck?
Well, on one hand, yes, I do have more reps with
Mm-hmm.
blue steel than any other deck, but I feel like there are some things you can do in Lorcana that are very powerful. You could get card advantage,
Mm-hmm.
you could get ink advantage, and blue steel happens to be good at doing both.
Yes.
I like that you're able. Oh, also the third thing is like the deck can interact very well
Mm-hmm.
at all stages of the game. uh, and having all three elements at the same time for me is very like it's something I really like. Amber Steel, admittedly, actually is able to do all three things, and I
Mm-hmm.
recognize that. It's probably why some of my friends in the Netherlands ended up playing Amber Steel. But what I do like about a Blue Steel is there's a nice card, a whole new world.
Mm.
It feels
Broken.
like pulling off a magic trick in the game. Absolutely, uh, especially with Quill. I feel like Quill plus a whole new world is one of the most powerful things you could be doing in the game. And what's important about that interaction is that unlike Amber Steel, we have the option not to use a whole new world.
Mm-hmm.
You can always put it under the quill and pivot to Hiram. And for me, this is one of the best parts of the deck. You're always putting your opponent at the giving your opponent some tension whether or not you're going to go for a whole new world or you're just going to suddenly shift to just having efficient card draw with Hiram
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So I feel like that um, it really fit my play style. I'm a bit of a control player, and um, having a deck that lets you ink multiple times every
Mm-hmm.
turn and play a lot of cards, for me, I couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, I agree. Fishbone Quill is one of the most broken cards in the game, and when you pair that with Whole New World, the card's really strong. Did you dabble into no New World builds or like tempo type builds? For example, if you see Harlan, congrats to Harlan for making his LCQ. He used a tempo build. Did you dabble into any of those builds?
I really am more of a control player. I like taking it to late game and suddenly winning out of nowhere with Dime and Tamatoa and
Mm-hmm.
well, Bell back then, now Ariel. But I've also tried without a whole new world, and it just didn't suit me. I mean, I feel like it's definitely a good pick, and one of my friends, Yardo, he swears by no whole new world, and he does pretty well with it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel like in a best of two format, you have to have a bit of high roll potential.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have like the chance to like have the nuts
Mm-hmm.
and and just potentially 2-0 your opponent. And a whole new world gives you some lines that would be impossible if you didn't have it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like again, shout out to Harden for venturing out and trying a different version of Sapphire Steel, which I'm happy to see as a Sapphire Steel player. Right, hopefully in future sets we can see these different
Yeah.
type of builds. But I do agree with you, right? It does have that difference of, well, yeah, you're focusing more on like aggro, but then you're losing out on like the late game explosion, being able to draw. And I can see why you did opt out to go for the New World list. And now like we can finally just dive into your list, and I have so many questions for you. I had a lot of people in the Sapphire Steel community that had questions for you. So this is gonna be very exciting to dive into your list. So the first thing I want to just say is, uh, when we look at it, you have like your pretty much your basic core cards, right? You have the Hiram, Cogsworth, Tinkerbell, Tamatoa, and the whole new world with swords. So that's something where it's just a staple. We don't really have to dive into it too much. But the first thing that we see that's noticeable using these new cards is the Jim Hawkins package. How is the Jim Hawkins package in the tournament? And moving forward, is that something that's going to stay in the list?
Okay, so I'm a bit of half and half on this.
Mm-hmm.
So small gym, I felt was a serviceable two drop.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mr. Smee is still great.
Mm-hmm.
I would I would say Calhoun might be the second best, but she's uninkable,
Yeah.
and I was a bit stretched on uninkables.
Mm-hmm.
Jim did some work, but because there were fewer daisies and because like I actually never played against Ruby. Well, I didn't get paired against Ruby Amethyst
Mm-hmm.
once during the entire weekend. I didn't think he didn't get his time to shine
Mm-hmm.
during the tournament. But Big Jim was actually great. As when you play a whole new world, you need to have a good singer.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is against Ruby decks, like Cogsworth, after singing a whole new world, gets mauled by Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Like he instantly dies. And Jim is a great singer because he's a 5/5, so Maui trades with him, and he can't be brawled unlike things like like Baymax, or he can't be Medusa like the Beast, for example. And it's happened a lot where that one damage from Jim was actually relevant.
Yes, I
Like
can imagine.
I would randomly ping a Merfolk and it would die, or even against um, blue red. There was a time where I pinged the Maleficent Dragon he had he had two big Caesars in play, and I played double swords,
And you kill
and
everything.
with the swords sung by, yeah, exactly, I killed three things that cost
Mm-hmm.
8 mana, it's 8 ink and up, which was insane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Jim was great, though. Again, I feel like if you play big Jim without small Jim, it doesn't feel as
That's
good.
good.
So, uh, yeah, I'm a bit torn on it. I think it's still a good thing to try, especially if like people are playing Queen's Castle again in like moving forward because of the popularity of Ruby Amethyst. But I'd say it's a pretty flexible slot.
No, I mean that makes sense, and you're right about the forward tag being really relevant, especially if locations come back in the meta. I did like Jim for the fact that because he does synergize with our deck really well, you're always double inking, so the forward tag does come up, and then you bring out Shift Jim, and he comes in pretty much being able to one shot for everything. It is unfortunate that he is an uninkable, so I can see how it gets
Yeah.
cluttered. I know a lot of Sapphire and Steel players are kind of torn between that right now. And another thing that was interesting was the Calhoun. Were you not playing Calhoun just because she's uninkable?
Yeah, it was mostly that. Like if I was not playing the gym package, I would definitely pick Calhoun as my two drop.
Okay, makes sense.
I tested Calhoun a bit, and it seemed like my Amber Steel matchup was already pretty good. I didn't struggle with it as much, and Calhoun felt like a card that I would play if I wanted to really dunk on Amber Steel.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's something I would consider if I would cut the gym package for sure.
Do you think the Fire the Cannon is the reason why you chose that maybe over a card like Captain Hook, to where you mentioned Diablo, right? You mentioned a card where Hook can trade into Diablos, whereas Fire the Cannons, you don't really want to use it on that. Your opponent's going to draw a card. Did you just like the Fire the Cannons because it's direct removal over a card like Captain Hook, to where it's a body on the board? And you're playing Smee too. Did you find that was a Hook a consideration?
Um, well, I do like that sometimes you really have to kill an unexerted character.
Mm-hmm.
It happens a lot, or like incidentally, maybe even a genie might have taken damage from swords and you could finish it off
Mm-hmm.
with cannons. There were games that I won entirely because I happened to draw two fire the cannons after I played the whole new world, which is like a mini swords.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I'd also say that on one hand, hook is possible because I expected a lot more
Lords of
emerald
Brown.
steel
Mm-hmm.
and I played against zero of them. So yeah, in that matchup, cannons is much better than hook. But
Mm-hmm.
given that I didn't play, I think there are much fewer Diablos, like green Diablos flying around. uh, I would say hook could be a consideration, but personally, I just like the ability to like just
Mm-hmm.
kill something while it's not exert.
And did you do any testing with Twin Fire? Because Twin Fire, like Fire the Cannons, does the same thing, but you can do it twice in one turn, but you have to discard a card. A card like Twin Fire on the draw, for example, being able to take out a Merfolk and a Bonsai, maybe is very strong. Or two genies and then playing a sword out to kill both of them is also very strong. Did you do any testing with Twin Fire? And if you did, why did you opt not to use it?
No, I admittedly did not because I felt that I was set on playing for sale, and I like the idea that with sale I could just play a card then play cannons. But I saw Harlan play some games, and again I'm really happy that he
Mm-hmm.
qualified,
Mm-hmm.
and Twin Fire actually seemed pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I would be hesitant to play a four swords, because you could have a glut hand with
Mm-hmm.
multiple holy rolls and swords. But Twin Fire acting as like a middle ground between swords and cannons
Mm-hmm.
actually looks pretty good. So I would definitely consider playing one, at least, yeah, probably play one copy
And
in my
try it out.
list, and having one copy for an opponent to respect it is really good.
Yeah, I personally have been trying it
Yeah.
out. I think it's a solid card. Definitely still need more testing, but it's definitely a card where if your opponents don't respect it, it's a big punish. Because in my testing, like I've had a Smee on board on the draw against Amber Steel. They quest with Daisy. They play like a piglet, and then now your Twin Fire can kill both those
Oh.
cards. So yeah, it's a card definitely to test. I know a lot of people are on the rise of that. And you did mention Cell. When Cell came out, you right away were you just like, I'm gonna ditch Tipo for Cell, or do you think now is there a meta to where you're gonna start playing? People might be leaning towards Tipo because they want to play cards like more swords, more twin fires, more cannons, or do you think Tipo is just not worth it anymore because of how strong Cell can be?
So I like the idea that when I play a whole new world,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a better seven than my opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And Tipo is one of the worst cards you could possibly top deck late game. That said, as you mentioned, there is a cost to playing Tail, which is you I used to play 17 uninkables,
Mm-hmm.
and I absolutely cannot get away with that
Not
if I'm
anymore.
playing Sail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are many times where you sail and you draw uninkable and uninkables and you just get completely bricked.
Mm-hmm.
So if yes, we're in a world where we want to play more copies of Twin Fire or maybe something like Four Swords or Zeus's, then Tipo would definitely be the better call for a build like that.
Mm-hmm. And did you find times in Sail where like you were like you activated Sail on two, and you were like and you drew an uninkable, like you were forced to ink something that you didn't want to, or like the way your build was, that like issue like that never happened, and every time you played Sail it was just fine.
Yep. So far, it hasn't. I haven't been punished by that.
Mm-hmm.
Though, of course, yeah. Even with 15 uniggables, there are times where the deck could break. I
Mm-hmm.
actually lost a game because I mulliganed and I ended up drawing double whole new world and and a dime, which
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to be doing. And my
Yeah.
opponent turned out to be purple green, so it was a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the uninkables can get pretty crazy, and that's where it's really scary, right? It's just like we're like as the game progresses on, like the mulligan is just so important. So a card like Tipo could help you in that scenario. But then again, like Cell is a
Yep.
strong card, so I really can't wait to see how you might end up testing that. And speaking of how you said right, I did like the fact that you mentioned with Tipo, right? If you do use a card like Tipo, you're relying more on heavy removal cards. Your removal, as far as swords, fire the cannons, and let it go, did you test Zeus at all? And I've been talking to R&B from Labyrinth, so shout out to Labyrinth and them over there cooking it up. He said that Zeus in this format is just so much stronger. Did you get to test Zeus out, or did you just decide the uninkable slot was just too crazy? I have to go with let it go as my removal.
So between you and me, I like Zeus more than Let It Go. I
Mm-hmm.
just play Let It Go as a means to not lose to
Removal.
Cinderella and Tamatoa. Unfortunately, like the thing is the folks I play tested with in the Netherlands are like Frank Karstead and Rob DeHad and Gabor. They all ended up playing Amber Steel. So I was playing against a lot of Amber Steel, and I realized that, oh wait, Cinderella's kind of a problem. I gotta not die to that. But Zeus was a card I definitely wanted to play, but I could not squeeze it into my list.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to keep a low uninkable count. I really, really wanted the dream scenario where you shift Jim on small Jim and sing Zeus and just like completely dump on your opponent's
Yeah,
card.
exactly.
But the problem with this dream scenario is you have to keep two uninkables in your hand that cost more than one.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's yeah, it's a bit of tension. But moving forward, I would definitely play more Zeus because I've noticed that Shark Maui has become more common in
Mm-hmm.
not just Ruby Sapphire, but I've heard that even some Ruby Amethyst players are even considering it. It's also that I feel that before Tamatova was like a death sentence for Blue Steel if we could not
Remove it.
answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But now, yeah, exactly. But now that some Ruby Sapphire players are trimming on dimes. They're going down to one copy or even for some people zero. If Tamatoa is no longer like a game over button for
Now you have
against
to
us, then
answer the
maybe
shark.
yeah. Yes, exactly. Answering the shark or answering a genie.
Mm-hmm.
Because let it go on genie isn't the best case scenario.
Mm-mm.
But using a genie, yeah, sure, they drew a card, but sometimes we just have so many cards that it doesn't really matter.
For a deck to be good in that aspect, right? You need to be able to answer Genie consistently. To me, that sounds like okay. Well, you got to have at least 8 to 12 answers to counter Genie. You and your meta, where green purple is very popular, I see here in your list, really your only direct answer to a Genie is the one Robin Hood and the two Let It Goes. You have swords, you have fire the cannons, but those cards you actually have to combo them together. Why these answers for the Genie? And if you did have changes for that, what would it be particularly for Genie?
Yeah, so I'd say that I would. I actually tested with two Robin Hoods,
Okay.
but I might have gotten a bit too confident against Purple Green in my testing, and I decided, oh, this matchup isn't as bad. I could trim down to one.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward, yeah, I probably would have gone back to two because Genie is a very it's a game defining card.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that the games against Purple Green where they didn't have Genie were significantly easier than the games where they did have Genie. But at the same time, it also can't be understated that in against Purple Green, Swords and Tinkerbell are amazing cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like just getting to wipe their board usually is enough.
Mm-hmm.
That if your opponent plays Genie, one of the best things I could do is raise. Like I have four Tamatoas. If I could play a Tamatoa against a deck which no longer is playing Bruno or things like that, I feel like I could finish the game faster than they could race with Genie. Of course, it gets a lot scarier if they're at like 15 lore,
Mm-hmm.
but ideally, we don't get to that position.
I see here you're on three visions of the future and three whole new worlds. I'm assuming you're playing 3 and 3 for a balance, and a lot of people might be surprised that you actually dropped one whole new world. I would love to hear your thoughts on the whole new world going to three, and then the visions.
So, um, I went down. I really like a whole new world,
Mm-hmm.
but I went down to three because I anticipated that the meta might lean more aggressively,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to avoid like having um, too many glut hands where
Mm-hmm.
you have multiple whole new worlds. I felt that having visions to dig for a whole new world was more than enough to compensate for it. I know
Mm-hmm.
you're a visions enjoyer yourself,
Yes, love it.
and I like that, right? The card can find you your Hiram, it could find you your whole new world, it could find you your Quill. Like I top 40 Bokum with Scuttle.
Mm-hmm.
And Visions
Yes,
is
yes,
like
you're on Scuttle. Yeah,
everything Scuttle wants to be, right?
even better. Mm-hmm.
Right. You can find whatever you want, and it's two more cards deep. Um, so fun fact, I wanted to play four Visions in the list,
Mm-hmm.
but originally I was on 62 cards, and when I told this to Frank Karsten, the numbers guy, he,
Yes, yeah, I
he was
heard
like,
he's a numbers
"Why?"
guy.
Yeah. Like he wanted me to cut down to 60. I couldn't bring myself to cut down to
We're
60.
61 boys
So
now.
I yeah, yep, exactly. 61 was, the middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to trim one vision so that I would have a leaner list. But I think that might have been the right amount because sometimes if you're playing against purple green, you don't have time to turtle around and
Yes,
spend two ink to dig. But Visions is one of the best top decks ever.
yes,
Like
it is. It
I'm
really
so happy
is.
when I draw it. Yeah.
So would you put it back at 62, 62, or you think that you have to play just the 61 if you're adding that visions in?
Hmm. Well, I'd say that
Did you need a fourth
if I
visions at all
absolutely
during your whole run? I guess that makes it more easy to answer.
hmm, I think that against some blue red decks when we
Mm-hmm.
were in like the full grind, it might have been helpful to have a fourth vision to dig for. If it could have found my dime like one turn earlier,
Mm-hmm.
or if it could have like found a Hiram,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been great to have. It's also great against Ruby Amethyst if Ruby Amethyst is indeed more popular.
Mm-hmm.
But would I play 62?
Probably
Well,
not.
I
Probably
don't.
not.
It's not beyond me. Yeah, but probably not. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think there's at least one card I'd cut. I
mm-hmm.
might probably cut the second Let It Go or something like that
That makes
to play
sense.
the fourth vision.
And before we get off the visions topic, there's one thing that I do want to say because this is something that a counter argument that people use when they don't want to play more visions is because if that when you whole new world or that vision could have been something else, but then in that same scenario, it's like well that exactly that vision it can be anything. It can be a sword. It can be a new world. Um, what do you say to that kind of argument when people say like you're just running a filler card where that card could have been the answer instead of finding the answer, but then that card also could have been a dead draw.
Exactly. Like would I mean it's a card that would represents the best card from the top five cards of your deck, and
Mm-hmm.
five cards is very deep.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How many people would say that they'd want to play like a full four grab your sword? Well, maybe some people would, but
Mm-hmm.
there or like maybe like Let It Go would be an example. How would you consider playing four Let It Go?
Mm-mm.
Probably not. But Visions lets you dig for those like
Mm-hmm.
few copies you have in your deck without you sacrificing deck space to play a card that could be dead for. So yeah, um, it's a you could think of Visions as a filler card, but if you look at card decks like Blue Red that play Visions
Mm-hmm.
and develop your brain, which, which is like
Yes, yeah.
maximum filler,
They just
but
always look
like
for their
it
answer.
works, yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
exactly. That's what makes the deck consistent. Yeah,
Yeah, I recommend everyone to be on at least three copies of Visions because that card is super strong. And to end your deck list,
100%.
um, we see the format going more as like fast, right? It's very fast, a lot of low to the ground. Do you see yourself going up to four swords, or do you see the build going towards like the four swords and then potentially playing one drop characters to fight back an aggro build? Because I think a big thing in this meta, especially on the draw, is if you don't have a body on turn one, you could fall behind a lot because every lore matters. You are playing the cannons to kind of counteract with that. Going forward, as the meta goes fast, do you see yourself replacing cannons with characters or adding characters as a one drop? And do you see a four swords?
So Blue Steel has a weakness with one drops. Well,
Mm-hmm.
one drop characters. I mean, Popsicle is an amazing one drop.
Yes.
where
Just
we
doesn't
I
fight
think
back.
Hook might be yes. I'm never sad to see
Mm-hmm.
some ice cream in my hand,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, Hook might be our best one drop, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not one I've ever been happy to play. Every time
Me
I play it
either.
in my deck, I feel like I want to cut this first. Would I play four swords? Um, I have been tempted many times,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just afraid of the on count. I think the best compromise would be playing something like Twin Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Like Twin Fire acts as
That makes
it could
sense.
be a fire the cannons, but it could also act as a mini swords for those really fast purple green draws, for example.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I really can't wait, and I'm pretty sure the people can't wait to see how your list changes within the next few days. I know now the season is over. You get to relax now for a bit and just enjoy another Arcana grind. We do have the set champs coming up, so I know you'll be working on the list to be on that, to adapt to that. So I really can't wait to see how your list comes out. But I think overall your deck list was super solid. It definitely represents you as a player. Like the Robin Hood was just I was super happy to see that. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is Justin. This is him. Something that I just didn't see and he saw. So I think that was really awesome to see. Now that the weekend was over, how did you? What was your overall just experience? Did you have a good time? You didn't regret your deck choice, and were you happy on how you ended the tournament?
Yeah, it Continentals is was such an amazing weekend, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited for those who get to go to the one in the US,
Mm-hmm.
because at least from my experience with the European Continentals, like it felt like a special event,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to give Ravensburger like credit for this for making it this way.
Mm-hmm.
They the venue was in Newport Bay Hotel, which was next to Disneyland. I actually stayed in one of the hotels nearby. It was very grand. Like some venues for tournaments could just be like these industrial warehouses in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of nowhere, and going from that to this like amazing like Disney hotel was like such a step up.
Very
Um,
magical.
yeah, right. Truly, it was really a magical experience. They even had the French voice actor of like Moana
Oh, okay.
perform like How Far I'd Go, and
Oh,
it
that's
it
great.
really felt like they put right. Yeah, it was a great weekend. Of course, I wish I made it to day two.
Mm-hmm.
I was 1 point short of that, but that's best of two. It's very unforgiving. But
Mm-hmm.
I walked out with an Elsa's Ice Palace and invitation to the ball. I was pretty happy with how things turned out. Um, on the revival in the revival tournament, I topped 16, and I felt like, "Oh, why couldn't I do this like
And the next
the day
one.
before?"
Uh-huh. And that
Right?
tournament was just
But
as hard.
yeah, exactly. These are, I mean, the revival tournament is basically most of the good players from the first day were carrying over, so it wasn't easy. But yeah, it was such an amazing weekend. I wish I could do it again. And I gotta say, like for those who are thinking of going to NA Continentals, like go for it. Even for the LCQ, it's such an amazing experience, and
Mm-hmm.
good luck to those who are competing.
What are your thoughts on this meta? And for the players who are going to Continentals LCQ, do you think just being say, yeah, take blue steel, it's definitely worth it in this meta?
Well, I might be a bit biased because
Mm-hmm.
I do love Blue Steel,
Uh-huh.
but admittedly, it's not a deck that you can just like pick up.
Exactly.
My advice to anyone going to Continentals is play what you're comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
play what you would enjoy playing, because it matters that maybe if you play a different deck, it might have a slightly higher win percentage than what you were thinking of playing. Any small advantage you gain from playing a deck with a higher win percentage is nothing compared to the huge advantage you get from playing something that
Mm-hmm.
you could play in your sleep.
Yes, that
If
makes sense.
so, Blue Steel is like that for me. I know I know pretty much every line I could go with the deck, and sometimes I even discover new ones. But
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I generally love playing, and if you have that same joy when you play your deck, it really helps your game. Like I people tell me that I always seem to be smiling on cameras because I'm actually having so much fun playing Blue Steel,
That
and
makes sense.
I can't say this about any other deck.
Yeah, because people will get lost in like wanting to win, right? Like they'll get like they don't want to lose, they don't want to win. And it's funny, like some people might take a deck and be like, "Oh, I should have switched this deck. I probably would have done better," but you probably wouldn't have, right? So I really do like the fact that you said just play what you're comfortable with, and obviously in your case it showed off, in Harden's case it showed off, and
Yeah.
that's what it's about. So again, congrats to you. Do you have any shout outs that you want to give out?
Yeah, I want to shout out to, well, of course, the Blue Steel Discord. You guys are great. It's always a pleasure seeing. Um,
The
it would
madness
have been
going
fun
on in
playing
there.
Bleakly. Yeah, absolute madness.
Uh-huh.
And also shout out to, well, my sponsor, World Class Cards, and my teammates. Thank you for the amazing weekend. I mean, some of you flew all the way from the States, and it was fun meeting you. And of course, to my friends here in the Netherlands. The it's a small country, but the talent is pretty big. Frank Karsten, Rob Dehan, Gabor. I tested with them, and it helped give me some confidence in some of my matchups and what to play. And of course, the folks in my LGS in Tabletop Kingdom in Den Haag. Uh, you have to start somewhere, and even like practicing in leagues has been fun.
Yeah, practice, 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 and it definitely pays off. Shout out to all those people that you mentioned, and just again, I thank you for coming on to this channel. I know it had been a minute since I had originally invited you, with your continents.
We finally made it happen.
Finally made it happen. Your Continentals came up, and what an awesome video, right? To first do it off, going over such an amazing accomplishment. So again, congrats to you, YouTube, Sapphire Steel community, Lorcana community. I hope you guys enjoyed this awesome content. A player at this caliber of a skill, playing a deck like this, it's super insightful to hear this. And just wait for Justin to come back into the channel next time. I do appreciate everyone for watching.